if Eala, can keep doing well with her tennis, who knows? The sky's the limit on the court, off the court.
Is she the biggest draw in women's tennis right now in the world?
And then we have a big challenger after this in...
Indian Wells officially opened its doors today, March 4th. And before a single ball was struck in the main draw, a tennis expert went off on the WTA for ignoring Alex Eala's 2 million Filipino army taking over California. The courts, the grandstands, the walkways. The largest Filipino community in the entire United States has arrived at Indian Wells, and the atmosphere hasn't even peaked yet. Eala walked in here as a seeded player for the first time in her career, ranked number 31 with a first round bye already secured. California holds nearly 2 million Filipinos. That's not a fan base. That's a cultural occupation of a tennis tournament. And the WTA has been sitting on the most valuable marketing gold mine in women's tennis right now, doing absolutely nothing with it. Earlier this week, a group of former professional players on a widely followed tennis podcast called her an absolute rock star. They asked publicly whether she's a bigger draw than Sabalenka in golf, and the answer was an immediate yes. Kim Cleese compared her fame to Michael Jordan's. Navratilova, speaking specifically ahead of Indian Wells, said it's very important for Eala to be protected from the craziness that comes with all of this. Tennis experts are going off, and the WTA is still treating this like a Tuesday. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now because this conversation is only getting louder from here. So, what exactly is the WTA ignoring? And why does it matter far more than most people realize? Melbourne had a Filipino community. Dubai had Filipino workers and expats scattered across the UAE. Abu Dhabi was the same story. Every venue produced extraordinary crowds, extraordinary noise, and an extraordinary atmosphere. But none of those cities had what California has sitting in its backyard right now. This is home territory for nearly 2 million people who have been waiting for this specific tournament since the moment Eala's Miami run put her on the global map last year. Indian Wells is not a destination they are flying into from across the world. It is within driving distance from communities that have been tracking her ranking climb, her results, and her draw announcement with the kind of attention most sports organizations would pay billions to manufacture. A tennis expert went off about this publicly just days ago, called it out directly, and made the point that the WTA has been handed something they could not have built through any marketing budget on the planet. And their response has been the sound of total silence. The evidence for that silence didn't start at Indian Wells. It started back in January in Melbourne, and it only got worse from there. On January 19th, the Australian Open placed Eala on Court 6, a mid-sized outer court with a capacity of roughly 1,000 people. What followed was complete chaos. The queue of Filipino fans outside Melbourne Park stretched back toward Rod Laver Arena. Hundreds were turned away at the gates before a single point had been played. Those who couldn't get inside settled for outdoor viewing areas and watched. On big screens. Inside Court 6, there was not a single empty seat, not a gap along the courtside ledge, not an unoccupied spot at the bar overlooking the sideline. Philippine flags covered the stands in every direction. Chants of "Let's go Alex" rang out so loudly that the umpire had to repeatedly call for quiet during play. Gayla's opponent that day was Alicia Parks, ranked number 99 at the time. Parks admitted after the match that the atmosphere genuinely rattled her in the first set. She told reporters she had to keep reminding herself to stay in the zone because the noise was affecting her concentration. Parks eventually won 0-6, 6-6-2, and 6-22 after being completely bagged in the opening set in front of that wall of sound. A prominent tennis coach stated publicly after the match that the organizers should have seen this coming days earlier. Eala was already being mobbed during her practice sessions before the tournament even started. That was a visible documented signal. And the organizers still put her on a court built for 1,000 people. One sports journalist put it plainly on social media that day. Putting Eala on Court 6 was just dumb. That was January. The WTA watched it happen. And then in February, they somehow made it worse. Through the second and third rounds of the Dubai Tennis Championships, Eala had been closing out center court as the last match of the night. That arrangement worked. Filipino fans arrived early and watched the matches before hers, and the stadium was already packed by the time she stepped on court. Other players benefited from it. The tournament benefited from it. Then came the quarterfinals, Eala against golf. And the WTA flipped her to open the night session instead of close it. Filipino fans watching from home are 4 hours ahead of Dubai time. The night session at 7:00 p.m. Dubai means it's already 11 p.m. in Manila. If Eala's match ran past 2 hours, fans back home were watching past 1 a.m. But beyond the timing issue, there was a crowd consequence any competent scheduler should have caught immediately. The match scheduled after Eala's quarterfinal was Alina Svitolina against Antonia Rusick. Once I walked off that court, the overwhelming majority of that packed stadium wear is going to leave with her. A former world number 3 and multiple WTA 1000 champion in Svitolina would then be playing in front of a half-empty arena. Not because people didn't respect her, but because the WTA had built the entire evening's crowd around one player and then scheduled that player first. The contrast with the previous round made it even more glaring. In the third round, Goff and Mertens played a 3-set battle before I took the court. That match had a full, loud stadium because the Filipino fans had shown up early and stayed. Goff stepped to the microphone after winning and addressed the crowd directly. "I know you guys are probably here for Alex, so I'm sorry to make you wait." The 4th-ranked player in the world was acknowledging to a packed arena that they had not come to watch her. That clip went viral immediately across every tennis platform online. Then, after beating Eala 6-0 and 6-22 in the quarterfinal, Goff said something the WTA should have been paying very close attention to. "I'd like to thank Alex for bringing a new demographic to the sport. I really appreciate a top 4 player publicly crediting a player still outside the top 30 at the time for growing tennis. That is not a routine post-match comment. That is a statement about what is actually happening in this sport right now." The WTA's structural response to all of it? Nothing. Just days before Indian Wells opened on the Nothing Major podcast, former professional players had a conversation the WTA's marketing department needs to watch in full. The central question was direct. Is Alex Eala the biggest draw in women's tennis right now? Bigger than Sablanka? Bigger than golf? The answer was an immediate yes. Not qualified, not hedged, just yes. One former player compared her crowd scenes to the effect Joel Fana had on the men's side in Miami last year. Every court at the Australian Open is standing room only, Dubai ISI standing room only. Tournament directors are now being forced to put her on center court simply because her crowds cannot fit anywhere smaller, something that does not normally happen with the 31's ranked player in the world. John Eisner said a lot of people have severely miscalculated how large the Filipino market actually is. Sam Querrey added that if I wins a Grand Slam, it would be one of the biggest moments in the entire sports world. She has already been on the cover of Vogue without a top 10 ranking and without a Grand Slam trophy. Kim Clears compared her to Michael Jordan. Navratilova said she needs protecting from the craziness. Nadal spoke out in her corner after she received online abuse following her Australian Open loss. These are not fringe opinions. Every credible voice in tennis is saying the same thing. The WTA has had 2 documented chances to get this right: the Australian Open and Dubai. Both times the response came after the fact, reactive instead of planned. Indian Wells is the 3rd opportunity, and by far the high-stakes one. This is not supporters flying in from Manila. This is the largest Filipino community in the United States, already within driving distance of the venue. The WTA is sitting on a cultural force generating sold-out venues, viral moments, and global attention. Built around a 20-year-old without a WTA 1000 title, without a top 10 ranking, without a Grand Slam trophy. When all of that eventually happens, and the question is when, not if, what the WTA failed to build around during this window will be one of the most discussed missed opportunities in women's sports marketing history. The 2 million Filipino army has taken over California. Indian Wells started today, and the WTA still hasn't shown up with a plan. Drop your take in the comments, whether you think the WTA is genuinely dropping the ball, or whether you think this criticism is overblown. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that button and turn on the notification bell, because as long as Alex Eala is in this draw, this channel will be here covering every development the moment it happens.